Okay, so coming up to join me here is Diana Frylink. Frylink? Thank you. Diana Frylink is presenting first in line Northam's connections to the Coolgardie water supply scheme. And a bit of a background on Diana. Diana commenced working at the C.Y. O'Connor Museum in 1996. She joined the National Trust in 2000 and has since led and curated many key education programs and is highly sought after for her knowledge on the Golden Pipeline. She is a Senior Education Officer at the National Trust of Western Australia. Please put your hands together for Diana Frylink.
Thanks very much. I was hoping my teacher's voice would be enough, but Kelly's going to do that because I can't do everything at once. So, Kelly, thank you. So this is what I'm going to do to be talking about today. I'm just short snippets of things I've found interesting over the past 30 years that I've been working on the pipeline. So I could call it the quirky and the dead that I'll be talking about. So I'm going to go back to the gold rush, when gold was found first at the Yilgarn, then Coolgardie, and next Kalgoorlie. And I don't really want to stir up the controversy between York and Northam, do I? Yes, of course I do. You know that. Yes. Okay. So you might recognize these items, if I may say so. Some of you are at an age when you'll recognize a water bag, and people were advised to take a water bag to these gold fields. Fill it as often as possible. And the other thing, if you don't recognize, it's an old-fashioned tin opener, and you had to take tinned dog with you. Right, thanks. So Northam benefited from the gold rush, and thank you very much, Jennifer. I don't know where you've disappeared to now, but you've certainly set the scene for me, because the stores did well. Apparently, on arrival in Fremantle, with judicious advertising and literature, newcomers were persuaded to wait to do their shopping in Northam, which they did at the big store, you know, where Red Rooster is now. And the Throstles were particularly important in that. Thanks, Kelly. Now, the farmers also did well. And again, Jennifer, thank you, the chaff. So Grass Valley is really well named. Farms from the Northam area provided hay and chaff for horses, and the horses and the manpower to get the goods east. So this poem was written, Marx encountered the teamster who inspired this poem while traveling to the goldfields. So Marx was a journalist, and he met more of these lads who were saving up to buy their own land. And he actually had to get permission to go, Marx, because if there was a shortage of water on the goldfields, you were only allowed one team every 24 hours. So they would travel together, these teamsters, so that they could dig each other out of the sand plain, because it was the particular bad part was called the Devil's Pinch. So this photograph is taken at at Woolgangi, and I'm going to use an awful water famine there to illustrate why Northam was both a retreat and a source. Thanks, Kelly. So the line in black that's a telegram, and it talks about Northam being a retreat, because Northam is the nearest permanent source of water. So during dry periods, people would leave the goldfields and come to Northam to wait for rain. And they would be given exemptions because, normally you wouldn't be allowed to leave your claim vacant, but because of the water famines, they were allowed to. And the second sentence goes to Northam as a source of water. I'm going to go back to Burlong Pool and contamination in my next slide. But there's a bit of irony in the water having to be railed from Burlong Pool. And I will just quote here from one of my dead boyfriends, C.Y. O'Connor, and this William de Mol. This is an engineer on the goldfields, and he says he's anxiously awaiting the arrival of material to enable me to increase my plant. But there's such a block on the line that things are unprocurable. A block on the line actually refers to they would stop all the trains except water trains going up to the goldfields. So those of you who attended Jeff's talk yesterday, you will know that Northam, as opposed to York, became the railhead. Thanks, Kelly. So this is actually Burlong Pool and a poem about retreating to it. So it's a Dry Blower Murphy poem. So Don Garden, in his History of Northam, he talks about people on their way to the goldfields stopping for 2 or 3 days, camping along the river before heading east. Others spent their entire summers at Burlong Pool. And this is where I would like to pay respect to the traditional owners of this land, the Balladong Noongar people, because the elders cared for this river for tens of thousands of years before colonization. And within 100 years of the British coming, the Avon had become polluted and salinity had become a problem. And I look forward to a paper after morning tea about repairing country with, present elders. So my respect to them too. Thanks, Kelly. So, no water on the goldfields? Well, instead of taking the water to the goldfields, why not bring the ore to the water? So I'm not sure if Robin Taylor is here today because she's an expert on this, but they came up with a scheme to bring the water, and that was just 6 kilometers southeast. I think Seabrook is that way. I think I'm pointing the right direction. So this was the second largest ore crushing battery that was established during the gold rush, and it was on the Mortlock River. And if you just listen to the name of the company that established it, it's meaningful. The Water Trust Mining and Crushing Company. They constructed special trucks to take the ore up, bring the ore down rather, and then they backloaded water. So this was an 80-head stamper, but by the time it got into operation, they had much better, bigger condensing plants, meaning desalination on the goldfields. So it stopped working within a few years. Now, you might hear Michael this after morning tea. Michael, you're talking about ruins. He'll be talking about love among the ruins. There's gold among these ruins, I believe, still. Yes. The National Trust has classified them. Do not go anywhere near them. Okay, thanks, Kelly. So, in these circumstances, the suggestion was that you should construct a dam on the Avon River and very simple, just put up a tall tower and pump water to the goldfields. Now, I'm not sure if Godfrey's here today. No. Godfrey made some calculation. I think this has had to be something like 300 meters high, this tower, to do that. So it really wasn't a practical option. And in any event, by 1895, water from the Burlong Pool was neither palatable for men nor suitable for locomotives, according to a PWAD statement. One of the reasons is that, that they washed sheep in there. You might know that they used to do that in the deep pools. So thanks, Kelly. So this is a rather prophetic depiction of the pipeline to the goldfields that opened in January 1903. Only the Helena River is the source, not the Avon. So I'll be talking about John Forrest there, and of course C.Y. O'Connor. But as far as Northam is concerned, I think the depiction of Chinese workers there is interesting. This is the 1890s, when the White Australia policy was happening. And I believe Northam has a line of Chinese graves, the only Chinese graves in the wheat belt. Okay, so that is the source and the treat. Let's go on to the premiers now. WA's second Premier was Northam's own George Throssell. Took over from John Forrest, and he was John Forrest's most loyal supporter, and by extension, the most loyal supporter in Parliament of the Goldfields Water Supply Scheme. He shared Forrest's vision that the scheme was a wider system of the colony's development that would help with the development of railways and farming districts. But I have another theory. It's not scientifically proven. Who is staying at the Farmers Rest Hotel? Anybody at the Farmers Home Hotel? There you go. Someone at the back there. Yeah. And can I just ask you, have you been to the Temperance Bar? Yes. The Temperance Bar is a cheeky nod called that because George Leake here, not George Leake, George Throssell here, that was his store that turned into a hotel. But do you remember we saw Jennifer again? Thank you. You showed us the Temperance Hotel. Northam became a model temperance town, and Throssell was actually the leading person in getting them to drink water as opposed to alcohol. So that's my theory as to why he supported the pipeline. Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Now, AI gives Northam 5 premiers. You might know there's a bit of a memorial to that near the river. I'm going to give you another because George Leake, who became the 3rd premier, his great uncle owned a large amount of land here in the town itself. In fact, I think we're even on the Leake estate area. We're not far from the high school, am I right? The high school, because this area, I think it was Hare School, and it was only subdivided in the 1890s. So now we said George Throssell was an ardent supporter. Leake is described as the pipeline's most persistent critic. You can see in the cartoon that he was against Forrest's policy of borrowing money for public works, and he followed Throssell after only 101 days. So he is an ardent supporter of private enterprise, and he felt, loans left public debt for the colony. Thanks, Kelly. So, even though he said he would like to smash it up, he didn't actually. The picture on the left is from the 1930s. And on the right is one of the gangs that was involved in joining the pipes. You can see what they've called themselves. There was a bit of rivalry between gangs, all to do with the speed and quality of the joints. And this one went by a particularly hopeful name. So, on coming into office, in his acceptance speech, Leake reiterated his distaste for the scheme, but he actually acknowledged he'd have to oversee its completion. Rather embarrassing for him, he had to raise the final loan for the scheme. So here's another of my unscientific theories. Could we argue that Throssell, this Northern Premier, actually saved the scheme? And if we hadn't had him for those 100 days in office, the pipeline might not have happened. Okay, thanks, Kelly. We'll just go to the first in-line thing on the title. During the 1890s, Northam had severe water shortages and sanitation problems, with the rubbish polluting the Avon, with all those people camped along there in Burlong Pool. Northam Hospital there was an increasing number of typhoid cases. So in April 1902, water from the unfinished pipeline went to supposed to be a temporary pipe behind the town hall. And this photograph is in June 1904, when the mayoress opened a more permanent reticulation works. As you'll see in the next slide, not everybody was happy about this. And that's apart from the water carriers who used to bring in supplies from wells and springs outside the town of Northam to sell in the streets. Thanks, Kelly. All right, this is people in Coolgardie complaining about it. And those of you who are able to read the small writing must have very good eyesight. So you would have learned about these t'other siders. We were called the t'other siders. We got to be called the sand gropers. And Jennifer, thank you for explaining what the t'other siders were. Of course, we blame them still for making us part of the Federation. And every time there was a downturn in the economy, we're still trying to secede. But so your Ernest William Carter was one of these t'other siders, yes, who voted probably for Federation. Okay. So thanks, Kelly. So in the end, look, I'm not sure if you can actually see this very well, but I just hoped you could see the up and downs. This is a cross-section of the scheme that was built, Sir John's scheme. And Baker's Hill is very important in it. So the highest part is Baker's Hill. So the water was pumped up to Baker's Hill and then graduated down. So that was very important, Baker's Hill, and regulating tanks. In general, you still have regulating tanks in the same place. And Clackline also featured, as I'll show you in the next slide. And by the way, those people from York or Newcastle, it's called Newcastle in that. Thanks, Kelly. Yep. So here's the refractory. You may know this was the refractory at Clackline to make bricks from the clay found there. And Meffin Ferguson, who invented the special pipe used in the pipeline, the locking bar pipe, he recommended the Clackline bricks, refractory bricks, because they retained heat. And you can still see at number 1 pump station today, you can see boilers, behind the boilers, you'll see bricks stamped with Clackline in them. And I have brought a bit of locking bar pipe in my handbag with me today, only a tiny bit, if anybody wants to see that. Okay, now I'm going to tell you how important Northam was in the maintenance of the pipeline. Workshops were established here, and they are still here. Workshops for the whole scheme. And you had a district engineer who was based here, and he was in charge for maintenance of the pipeline from Mundaring, all the way from Mundaring to Merredin. And the first district engineer in Northam was John Parr. And these are photographs taken, the next 2 slides, not yet, of some of his photographs that he took. And that's the camera that he used to take it. And this is his house in Northam. You'll notice it's not in Northam's Knob Hill, not in the fancy bit. It's actually 37 Newcastle Road, so the road to 2J. 4 of those 5 children that you see there were born in Northam. And I don't know if you can work out that that's actually a bowling ball there. So on the 5th of May, just nearly been the anniversary, 1906, the first organised club competition was conducted on the Northam Greens, and Parr was in the pairs event and won that bowl. Donated by Alcock and Co. I don't know if any Northam historians know of him. Okay, Kelly. So this is Parr standing at the West Northam tanks, top left. He's a water hammer and surge expert. And you still have regulating tanks in West Northam. They provide emergency storage, but they're also very important in reducing the pressure in the pipes, actually preventing bursts. Now, I don't know that you can see the car road, Joe, down there, but I swear it says N13. So I think this is one of the first cars in Northam, and they used to go up the pipeline, exploring the pipeline in that car. And the medals, top right, Pa was given for a paper on the operation of the Goldfields Water Supply Scheme, for a paper that he gave in England. Now, Pa was responsible for taking the pipeline over the Avon, because in 1917, and I think, Michael, you're going to be talking about the Poole Street Bridge, 1917, the floods, they decided to take it over. I think the shopkeepers would probably have been grateful for that, because not only did they get flooded by the river, but the pipeline used to go along Fitzgerald Street, and they would get flooded there too. Okay. Now, I come to you. I left home this morning, number 1 pump station. I went and got my piece of locking bar pipe. So I've come to you from number 1 at the foot of Mundaring Weir, which is the one on the left, not to be confused with Northam's pump station on the right. And thank you, colleague Michael took this photograph as well. And when I asked him to take it, I didn't realize they'd actually knocked it down, Northam's number 1 pump station. But it was so important, they've actually left a reminder of it there. And in the next slide, thanks, Kelly, we'll zoom in on it now. I was horrified to see that the birds of Northam don't treat it with the respect it's due. But it is a wastewater pumping station, so maybe, But the chap who is, we can't actually see his name there, but the chap responsible for Northam's number 1 pump station, Norm Fernie there, is also the 2nd district engineer based in Northam for many years. And I have to tell you that both these boys, these district engineers, Pa and Fernie, both of them had corrosion in their pipes. And they had to deal with corrosion in their pipes. So almost as soon as it was built, corrosion became a problem in the pipeline. Okay, Kelly, next one. So Pa, if we go with internal corrosion first, if you have a look top left, that's corrosion in the pipe from too much dissolved oxygen. And they needed to get rid of it. They did several things, including the photograph, his picture on the right, de-aerating the water in the pipes. And Fernie was in favour of internal lining as well, which is in the middle one. And it's still done, only now by hand. External corrosion, that was to do with the pipeline being buried in saline soil. Fernie noticed that Pa's pipes going over the river weren't so badly corroded, and that's when they took the decision to relay the pipeline above ground. And I've actually given you Northam, I've given you another premier. I've given you a 5th premier. Do you see Premier James Mitchell, sometimes known as Moo Cow Mitchell because of his cow town? He's established Karama. But he took this decision in the Great Depression to actually refurbish the pipeline and put it above ground. So he's a Northern premier who saved the pipeline, one could say. Got only 2 more slides. Thanks. Nearly there. So I also wanted you to know that Fernie, the 2nd district engineer, was Wandawi. He was responsible for establishing the iron and steel industry at Wandawi. And the welding that you see in the top there, that's also Fernie. It was he who said we can have a continuously welded pipeline. It can be a rigid pipeline and be above ground. And for those of you who want to see how we used to weld the pipelines, not weld them, join the pipelines, I've brought a model with me as well. Okay. Thanks, Kelly. Now, I've talked about some premiers responsible, maybe for even saving the pipeline, and engineers that we can argue have kept the water flowing. But I also want to acknowledge, and here's somebody whose relatives came out as DPs, displaced persons. So thousands of displaced persons came out, and they were camped in Northam, the Holden camp, Northam Army camp. And I was, the Public Works Department signed up for this scheme that she was talking about, whereby workers were contracted to the government for 2 years in return for coming out to Australia when they were displaced by the war. And I was standing in line at a multicultural festival in Northam a few years ago, waiting to catch a bus for a tour of the Holden Army camp, and I overheard some words. A lady said to her friend, 2 days later, we were sent to number 5 pump station. So this is a school project done at number 5 station by Marion Seitz and Josephine Bartlett. And there was a Bartlett on every one of the pump stations. And I just wanted to say that these people, these displaced people, helped keep the water running. And they've made their mark in Northam in terms of food as well as other areas. But I have to tell you, you would get a reminder of them if you went out to number 5 pump station. We've seen dill growing there, haven't we, Kelly? Dill and other plants that they've planted to as reminders of their previous lives. Okay, I think that's it. Any questions?
I have a question to all of you from the floor. Do you think twice when you turn the tap on? I think I will definitely now. So is there a question? Yes.
Thanks for that talk. It was super interesting. I'm just wondering whether you had any sort of personal opinion as to why Northam was so influential in terms of politics in the number of premiers it produced.
I'd say it's something in the water, don't you think?
Great question.
No, I have to say that Throssell, did you hear about him yesterday as well? You know, he was a bit of a pushy person, wasn't he? But yes, did well. I don't quite know. It was the party, you know, maybe being farming, lobbying, something along those lines? Yes. Do we have anybody from Northam that can help us? That can tell us, got any other suggestions? We'll have to find a theory, although mine aren't always scientific. Yeah.
Incidentally, a lot of talent has come out of Northam. Sir, was that a question?
In your research, were there options apart from a pipeline in terms of local solutions to water supply in the goldfields?
Well, you might have heard me refer to mammoth condensers, right? So that's desalination, and you have the salt water there, right? But of course, they had to cut down all the trees for that, so that didn't become a solution. But I see Malcolm here. Did I see Malcolm Trail? Because I think yes, there we go. I thought I see. I mean, they were even talking a pipeline from Albany, weren't they? Yes. So they did consider other things, but as C.Y. O'Connor said, C.Y. O'Connor, my dead boyfriend here, it's 1896 was when he put in this report, July 1896, so we're coming up for an anniversary. And as he said, I've been asked to look at all possible solutions and a pumping scheme, By the way, he didn't call it a pipeline. He called it a pumping scheme because it's more than a pipeline. You've got to have the dam itself and the pumping stations. He said a pumping scheme is the only practical solution. So yes, they did consider. And he did say, I've tried going underground, but the water is hypersaline. And not only that, it was not under pressure, so they had to pump it up. So that kind of defeated, that would have been very expensive to do. And he said, I've tried building dams in the goldfields. In his report, he mentioned that as well. No suitable holding ground. You know, it's very sandy. It's not like at Mundaring where we've got a lovely granite base for the dam. And then high evaporation, low precipitation. So he reiterated this pumping scheme's the only way to go.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the floor? Yes. Wait for the mic.
Oh, it's not so much a question, but we'd love to look at the bits and pieces you brought if you have the time.
Oh, yes. I'll show you my bits and pieces. Yes.
Secreted in your handbag.
I'll put them on the table at the back.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Diana. Please put your hands together again for Diana Frylink. Thank you.